Imagine this. Your boss is cheating, stealing company money, trash-talking the whole team, and he accidentally Bluetooths his dirty little secret straight into your hands. I didn't hack him. I didn't leak anything. All I did was unmute the mic. You think you'd stay quiet? Or would you let the whole company hear exactly who they really are? Let's start at the Christmas party, where their affair, their fraud, and my revenge all went live in front of everyone. My name is Vanessa. I'm 34 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. It was the kind of night that looked perfect in pictures. You know the type. Christmas lights strung like stars, sparkling against glass windows. A too-sweet peppermint cocktail in one hand. The other hand clenched tight in my coat pocket, trying not to tremble. In every photo from that night, if you scroll through the company hashtag, it probably looks like a dream. People grinning with their mouths wide open, cheeks flushed from the open bar. If you paused the night right there, you'd think this was a celebration of hard work, of teamwork, of another year survived together, but my fingers knew better. They always do before my brain catches up. My nails dug into my palm inside that coat pocket, grounding me, reminding me that something was off, that I was there to work, not to belong. I stood at the back of the ballroom just behind the sound table. The DJ wore a red blazer and kept asking if the mic was still muted between songs. It was. A soft red glow blinked on the bass. From where I stood, I could see everything and be seen by almost no one. The ballroom was one of those rented hotel spaces with too much gold trim and a carpet pattern that looked like it was designed to hide spilled drinks. Round tables wrapped in white linen, centerpieces with fake holly and battery-powered candles. People twirled in front of the DJ booth, taking selfies, fixing their hair in the reflection of the dark windows. My little kingdom was a folding table covered in cables, adapters, and the sticky ring of someone's abandoned beer bottle. I wasn't even supposed to be working, but volunteering to help always means more hours when you're the only woman in the room who knows how the sound system works. They call it being a team player. I call it unpaid overtime in heels. My feet were already throbbing in those black pumps I bought on sale because someone once told me heels make you look more put together in corporate spaces, announcements timed between songs, speeches that were supposed to land before people got too drunk to remember them. I kept checking my watch, not because I had anywhere more important to be, but because I wanted proof that this night was actually moving forward and not looping in place. I was queuing up the next track. Mariah, probably. The opening bells of the song sat there on the screen, waiting for me to press play when the current track faded. That's when I saw him. Tyler. Leaning too close to someone he swore he wasn't seeing. Kristen. The same Kristen who emailed HR last month about female energy causing distractions in the office. She wore red velvet like it was armor and turned her head too slow when she laughed at his joke. Their bodies angled toward each other in that way people do when they think no one's looking. It's funny how loud a room can be and still go quiet around one moment. The bass thumped. Someone shouted the lyrics near the front. Glass clinked at the bar. But all I could hear was the sound of my own pulse in my ears as I watched them. They didn't see me, but I saw everything. I saw the way his fingers brushed a bit of imaginary lint from her shoulder, like he had the right. I saw how she pretended not to lean into his touch and failed. The way she tilted her chin up, like she was already above everyone here, like she was already above me. And more importantly, I remembered something. Earlier that week, Tyler had used the DJ board to play a slideshow for our Monday meeting, said it was easier than using the conference room TV. He synced his phone to the board, adjusted the volume, then forgot to unpair. I watched him do it. I also watched him panic when someone asked to borrow his phone afterward. He made a joke, something about company secrets, but his fingers were trembling. Back then, I was just trying to get through another meeting. I was the one asking if anyone could please mute their laptop notifications, the one making sure the HDMI cable worked, the one who stayed after everyone filed out, picking up coffee cups and straightening chairs like an unpaid hotel staff member in business casual. At the time, I brushed it off. Because when you're a woman in an office like ours, you learn to brush a lot of things off if you want to keep your job. The weird comments, the jokes that land a little too close to home, the way men like Tyler talk over you in meetings and then repeat your idea 5 minutes later for applause. But tonight, I saw the way his hand lingered on Kristen's lower back as they walked to the bar. His thumb traced a lazy circle against the velvet, possessive and casual at the same time. She glanced up at him with that smile, the one she used in presentations when she wanted everyone to think she was harmless. And I remembered that blinking red light. The mic sat there on its stand, innocent as a sleeping animal, muted, listening, waiting. So I reached out and tapped the button. The red glow disappeared. For a second, nothing changed. I could still feel the vibration of the bass through the soles of my shoes. Someone near the front whooped, completely oblivious. The bartender filled a row of glasses with something golden, the liquid catching the lights. Overhead. Then, a click, a soft crackle. The kind of sound only people like me ever notice. The kind of sound that says something is about to happen. Then static. And a voice. Tyler. You locked the office door, right? The words slid into the room like an uninvited guest. They didn't match the song that should have been playing. They didn't match the mood in the photos people had just posted. Kristen. Relax. No one stays past 9 but her. Her. I didn't need anyone to clarify who her was. I could feel a few heads turning toward the back of the room, toward the sound table, toward me, as if the people closest to the speakers were trying to solve a puzzle. Tyler. We're not using our phones again. I don't trust cloud backups. I'm deleting the call log. Kristen. You better, if HR hears this. Then silence. Not from the system, from the room. The music had cut out the second their audio played. What was left was the raw sound of 100 people realizing they weren't supposed to hear what they had just heard. Laughter stopped midair. Someone's sentence died halfway out of their mouth. Even the ice in the glasses sounded louder than their words, the tiny crackle of cubes shifting in melted liquor. I didn't flinch, didn't rush to mute it again, didn't apologize. My hand hovered over the controls, steady now. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix something I didn't break. I just let it play. Kristen. I can't stand working with that team. They're all useless. Tyler. We're carrying this department, babe. Let 'em drown. The word babe echoed through the speakers, bounced off the chandeliers, and landed like a slap. Someone gasped behind me. It wasn't a dramatic movie gasp. It was small, sharp, involuntary. The sound people make when a quiet suspicion finally gets proof. In front of me, 2 figures froze near the bar. Tyler dropped his drink. The glass didn't shatter. It just thudded against the carpet and tipped, sending a slow, amber stain crawling outward. Kristen's face went white, like snow that's about to get dirty. They turned toward me. I said nothing. For the first time all night, every eye in that ballroom found the same point and stayed there. On me. On the woman in black heels and a sensible blazer. The one who usually blended into the background, half hidden behind a laptop screen and a stack of printouts. The DJ looked at me wide-eyed. I could see the question forming in his throat. Did you mean to do that? Should I cut it? Is this a glitch? Before he could ask, I stepped forward, picked up the microphone, and let my voice cut through what was left of the music. Me. Sorry. This audio was saved in the shared system. I assumed it was approved for playback. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Calm, steady, almost bored. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The speakers carried every syllable to the farthest corners of the room. People at the back straightened in their chairs, suddenly alert, phones hovering halfway between table and face as their recording apps silently kicked in. Across the room, the regional HR director stood up. He was dressed as Santa. Red suit, fake beard hanging loose around his neck. The irony would have been funny if my chest hadn't been full of heat. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. He adjusted his belt. His eyes swept the room, landing on Tyler, on Kristen, on me. Managers looked at each other, a silent language passing between them. One of them pulled out their phone, thumbs moving fast across the screen. Another walked toward the exit like he already knew he'd be writing reports tonight, building a paper trail before the hangovers even kicked in. Kristen tried to speak, tried to say it was edited, that this was taken out of context, but her voice cracked. She took a step forward, then seemed to think better of it. Her eyes were glossy, but not from tears. From fury, from the sheer shock of realizing the room she always thought she controlled was no longer on her side. And Tyler? He reached for the mic I still held. His hand came toward me, fingers open, palm up, as if he could soften the gesture into something harmless, like we were just co-workers sharing equipment. I stepped back. Me. Touch me. And I'll assume you're continuing the behavior described in the call. The words left my mouth before I fully thought them through. But once they were out there, hanging in the charged air, I didn't regret a single one. He stopped cold, his face flushed a deep, blotchy red that had nothing to do with holiday cheer. He looked past me, over my shoulder, maybe hoping for someone to laugh it off, to break the tension, to say she's being dramatic. No one did. HR waved him over. It was such a small gesture. Just a flick of the wrist. But it carried the weight of every policy slide deck, every training module, every complaint that got documented and then buried. Kristen looked around for someone, anyone, to defend her. No one moved, not even the interns who always laughed at her jokes a little too hard, not even the guy from finance who once wrote her name in the whipped cream on the office cupcakes. They all just watched, like something was finally snapping into place, like the story they'd been telling themselves about who the heroes were in this office had just been interrupted by a very loud, very inconvenient truth. I handed the mic to the DJ, nodded, and walked toward the coat rack. My legs felt oddly light, not shaky, not weak, just free. The kind of feeling you get when you set down a box you've been carrying for so long, you forgot what it was like to stand up straight. No screaming, no chaos, just the quiet unraveling of a secret, played loud enough for everyone to hear. The DJ gently eased a neutral instrumental track back in, something soft. That didn't challenge the stunned silence too much. People started whispering in small, tight clusters. Someone at the dessert table pretended to be very interested in brownie bites. I slid my arms into my coat sleeves, feeling the familiar weight settle on my shoulders, only this time it didn't feel like armor. It felt like confirmation. And the part no one realized yet? I didn't record a thing. They did. I didn't leak it. They synced it. I just unmuted the mic and let the truth speak for itself. The cold outside felt like a reward. Not because I liked winter. God, no. I'm a Texas girl. Grew up in the kind of heat where you had to peel your jeans off by the time you got home. But that night, the December air outside Nashville hit my skin like clarity, like justice, like everything I'd held in for months finally had somewhere to go. I sat in my car for a while, didn't turn the key, just listened to the silence. The engine ticked softly as it cooled. The faint thump of bass from the ballroom was just a dull heartbeat through the concrete walls. Out here, the parking lot was its own world. Rows of cars, white lines, sodium lights buzzing overhead. It felt like the night had split in two, and I'd stepped over a line I couldn't uncross. Inside the ballroom, I could still hear murmurs echoing through the walls, muffled voices raised and nervous. Someone laughed too loudly, the sound sharp and forced before it faded again. But none of it reached me. Not anymore. For once, the storm was theirs to manage, not mine. I pulled off my heels. They'd been digging into the backs of my ankles for 2 hours. My toes were frozen. But I smiled as I tucked them on the passenger seat. Barefoot in a corporate parking lot, dress hem brushing my knees, I felt more in control than I had in months. The rough concrete under my tights felt more honest than any carpet inside. The funny thing? I hadn't planned revenge. Not like this. I hadn't drawn up a master plan in a notebook. I hadn't circled a date on my calendar and written tonight in red ink. This wasn't some long game I'd been playing. People always think you sit down with a list, a glass of wine, plotting every move like a movie villain. They imagine you rehearsing speeches in the mirror, picking dramatic music for your big moment. No. For me, it started small, like most betrayals do. A missed promotion, an email that said, "We're moving in a different direction," even though the direction was built on my work. A title given to someone who had less experience and more weekend golf pictures with Tyler on Instagram. A comment in a meeting that made me shrink a little in my chair. "Let's have someone more polished present this," he'd said once, eyes sliding past me to land on Kristen. People chuckled. I smiled along with them, cheeks burning while I pushed my notes away. A budget report where my name was suddenly gone. Same layout, same formulas, same colors. Only now it was our report. Our win. Somewhere between drafts, I'd slipped off the page. At first, I thought I was imagining it. You tell yourself you're tired, that you misremembered, that you're being sensitive. You scroll back through old versions, through email chains, searching for your name like a missing word. Gaslighting doesn't announce itself. It drips. A question about your tone here. A joke about you overthinking things there. Little edits to the story until you start to wonder if you're the one rewriting it wrong. Tyler had a way of smiling at me in front of others. Called me rock star. Said things like, "We'd be lost without Vanessa," loud enough for the interns to hear. He'd clap me on the shoulder in front of leadership and make it sound like we were a team. But behind closed doors, he took credit for every project I carried, blamed me for deadlines that were broken before I touched them, pulled me off leads I'd chased for months, and handed them to his golf buddies with a wink. He'd forward my work from his email and sign his name at the bottom like it had always been that way. Kristen was worse. She played the supportive coworker role so well I almost believed her. She'd drop by my desk, ask about my dog, bring me pumpkin bread in October like we were friends. She'd compliment my blazer, laugh at my jokes, send me memes in the middle of the day. Then she'd forward my Slack messages to Tyler, changing words, cutting context, adding commentary that made me look difficult. "Just keeping you in the loop," she'd write above a screenshot of me asking a normal question, followed by her apologizing for my tone. I'd read it and feel my own reality tilt. "You want to know the truth?" I cried. In the Target parking lot, hands still on the steering wheel, headlights off, watching strangers push red carts past my car while my inbox glowed on my phone. In my bathroom, sitting on the closed toilet lid while the shower ran to cover the sound. At my mom's house during Thanksgiving when she asked if I was okay and I couldn't answer without my lip trembling. She looked at me over a sink full of dishes. "They're not paying you enough to look this tired," she said. I laughed, changed the subject, pretended the lump in my throat was from the dry turkey. I didn't fight back at first. I folded. And they knew it. They saw how quiet I got in meetings, how I stopped speaking up, how I let my ideas stay in my notebook instead of risking them out loud, how I said sure, no problem to everything, even when my whole body said it was a problem. They called it professionalism, said I was easy to work with, reliable, low drama. But it was fear of becoming the angry woman in the office, fear of being labeled difficult and watching that word show up in reviews and casual conversations, fear of confirming every stereotype they already had loaded and ready, fear of giving them the story they were already writing about me, fear of being replaced. Because people like Tyler and Kristen always have someone lined up, a cousin of a friend, a guy from their networking group, a newer, shinier version of you who hasn't learned the rules yet. I stayed late, cleaned up their messes, hid the receipts they should have signed, let Tyler use my login for a report he never finished, just so our numbers wouldn't tank. I fixed their typos, smoothed their emails, repaired their broken spreadsheets at 9 p.m., while cold takeout sat beside my keyboard and my dog waited at home. I was the invisible net under their tightrope, catching every wobble so they could pretend they never stumbled, and when bonuses came around, he got mine. His name was on it. Mine wasn't even in the spreadsheet. I remember printing it out and staring at the cells. The numbers blurred for a second. Rows of names with tidy amounts in the bonus column. Next to mine, a clean, unapologetic 0. Kristen got a Leadership Initiative Award for a presentation I built. They used my slide deck, my design, my data. I watched them present it like they were solving climate change. Tyler paced the front of the room, sleeves rolled up, voice smooth. Kristen clicked through transitions I'd timed down to the second, smiling at my punchlines like they'd just occurred to her in the moment. And I clapped. I actually clapped. My hands hurt, and I couldn't tell if it was from the force or the humiliation. Part of me floated above my body, watching myself applaud my own erasure. God, that was the moment I felt it crack. The part of me that thought, maybe, being good was enough. That if I kept my head down, someone would notice, someone would step in. No one did. No one asked where the debt came from. No one wondered why the woman who handled every detail of that project was sitting 3 rows back. The silence around it settled over me like a weighted blanket I hadn't agreed to wear. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't last forever. It builds, it echoes, and eventually someone, somewhere, unmutes the mic. Sometimes that someone is you. That night at the party, I didn't know what would play when I hit the button. I didn't know if there was anything recorded at all, or if it would just be static and an awkward pause. My hand moved anyway, tired, steady, done. I just knew I wasn't going to protect them anymore. They used the system like it belonged to them. They treated company equipment like it was disposable, synced their phones, ran their private conversations through shared hardware, trusted that nothing would ever leak beyond the walls they controlled. They forgot someone like me built it. Not technically, no, but I was the one who managed the office events. The person they called when the speakers buzzed or the projector failed. The one who knew which drives were shared, which cables were labeled wrong, which devices always stayed paired a little longer than they should. They thought it made me less powerful. It didn't. It made me invisible. And invisibility has its perks. Invisible meant I could stand 3 feet away and they'd talk like I wasn't there. Invisible meant I saw who stayed late and who pretended to. Invisible meant I knew which drives were synced, which files were stored on the shared cloud, which passwords never got changed because it's just the party system. I heard things, saw things, learned which drives were synced, which files were stored on the shared cloud, which passwords never got changed because it's just the party system. Tyler never checked if his Bluetooth disconnected. Kristen thought her deleted recordings disappeared from synced storage. They didn't. And when I tapped that mic button, all I did was open a door. One they'd left unlocked, one they assumed no one would ever walk through. By the time I got home that night, I had 2 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Corporate HR. The city on the caller ID was 3 states away. Not local HR. Higher. The kind of people who only showed up when something big broke. And one text from Kristen. Kristen, you're making a mistake. 7 words, perfectly punctuated, glowing on my screen. I didn't respond. I stood in my kitchen with my coat still on, phone in my hand, staring at the message until the screen dimmed. I thought of 100 possible replies. None of them would change what had already happened. Instead, I deleted it. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. It pressed right into that soft place they'd spent months wearing down, the part of me that still wondered if I was the problem. If wanting basic respect was asking for too much, but because for the first time, I didn't care what they thought of me. I cared what I thought of me. The next morning, my badge still worked. Barely. The reader light hesitated for a heartbeat before it flashed green. That pause told me there were conversations happening in rooms I wasn't in. Lists being updated. Lines being drawn. By noon, Tyler's didn't. I watched him swipe it once, twice. His confident smile thinned each time the light stayed red. Security came over. They spoke in low voices. He gestured too much. His hands looked bigger without the safety of his access. Kristen's was revoked by 2 p.m. She came back from lunch with a latte and a paper bag, talking into her phone. The second her badge failed, the brightness in her voice cut off like a wire had been snipped. She tried again, harder, as if that would make a difference. It didn't. Their desks were cleared before the end of the week. Boxes appeared, photos disappeared. The mugs, the plants, the little motivational quote blocks, gone. Drawers that used to slam shut now sat open and empty. For a few days, the emptiness felt louder than any gossip. Official word? Violation of corporate code and ethics. That's what the email said. Sanitized. No details, no names. Just a reminder about our values and a link to the handbook no one read after onboarding. No one blamed me. Because officially, I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't leaked a file. I hadn't hacked a device. I hadn't spread rumors or doctored audio. I'd just unmuted a mic. That's what scared them the most. The idea that it didn't take hacking skills or secret access to bring the truth into the light. Just one tired woman who stopped cushioning the fall. Because deep down, they knew it could have been any of us. Any one of the people they stepped on. This time, it was me. I thought it would feel better. Watching their names disappear from the org chart, little gray boxes turning blank. Titles reassigned, email addresses grayed out like they never belonged there in the first place. Hearing HR whisper phrases like severance violation and legal review in hallways they used to strut through. Seeing Kristen's office plants left behind in a box by the freight elevator, leaves drooping, soil spilled on the cardboard like even they were exhausted. I thought I'd feel vindicated, powerful, whole. Instead, I felt tired. Not physically. My body was fine. I was still waking up, still showering, still driving to work and back like always. Emotionally, like I'd just been holding my breath for too long and didn't know how to exhale. Like there was a pressure in my chest that refused to convert into relief. On TV, justice has a soundtrack. The bad guy gets exposed. The woman who was ignored finally gets her moment. The music swells, the camera pulls back, and you can almost feel the audience clapping somewhere in the dark. Real life is quieter. Real life is a ding from Outlook, another meeting invite, a calendar that doesn't care what you survived last week. People treated me differently after that. Not badly, just carefully. The way you carry a box labeled fragile when you don't actually know what's inside. The way people lower their voices around a sleeping baby even when it's in another room. Like I might shatter or explode. Some looked at me like I'd done something heroic. They held doors a little too long. They told me, in hushed tones, I'm really glad that came out, and someone needed to say something. Others acted like I'd detonated a bomb under the break room table. They stopped mid-conversation when I walked in. They straightened their posture. They made jokes about not saying anything near the speakers and laughed too hard at their own discomfort. Melissa from accounting started bringing me coffee. The first time, she set it on my desk and said, "They were out of your creamer, so I guessed. Hope this is okay?" Her hand shook just enough for me to notice. I thanked her. She hovered, then blurted, "For what it's worth, I saw how they treated you. It wasn't right." Then she scurried back to her desk like she'd said something dangerous. Ben from IT asked if I wanted to get out of town for a weekend. Said he knew a cabin in Kentucky with no cell service. He leaned against my cubicle wall, pretending to fix a printer ticket. "You ever been?" he asked. "It's quiet, no Wi-Fi, just trees." I laughed, politely. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't, because I could still hear the call in my head. Every word. It played on loop at the ugliest times. In the shower, in the grocery store. Half asleep at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling fan. Kristen, "I'm not working late again unless Vanessa handles it." Tyler, "Let her. That's what she's there for." That's what she's there for. It stuck to me like static, clung to the back of every compliment. Every, "We're so lucky to have you." Every, "You're a lifesaver." They never said it to my face. They smiled, called me the glue, and said I was such a team player. They'd pat my shoulder and say, "We'd fall apart without you," like that was an honor instead of a warning. But behind closed doors, I was just a convenience, a background feature, a human safety net, an unpaid assistant with a master's degree, a woman who said yes too easily. I started keeping a notebook after that, just for me. A simple, spiral-bound thing I picked up at Walgreens on my way home one night. Nothing fancy. No inspirational quote on the front. just a blue cover and college-ruled pages that felt more honest than my inbox. Every time someone made a comment that rubbed me wrong, I wrote it down. Not just the words, but the time, the place, who was there. Maybe your overreacting looks less convincing when it's surrounded by 50 similar lines over 3 months. Every time a task landed in my inbox that should have gone to someone else, I logged it. Can you just throw this into a deck for tomorrow? From a manager who hadn't attended the planning meetings. Can you jump on this client call? From someone whose name was on the account, not mine. Not out of pettiness, out of clarity. Because when people tell you to move on, they forget. You can't move on from something that keeps happening. You can't heal a bruise that's being hit again every week. You can't let it go while it's still landing in your lap with a smiley face in the subject line. 1 week after the party, I was asked to help plan the next corporate retreat. Just logistics, they said. You're so organized. We were in a conference room with bad fluorescent lighting and worse coffee. The director slid the printed agenda across the table toward me, his pen already circling my name next to support. You're so good with the little details, he added. The little details, the entire infrastructure required to make everything look effortless. I felt that old, familiar pull in my chest. Say yes. Don't make waves. Be useful. I told them I'd need a project title, a team, and 15% of my hours formally moved to event management. The words came out calm, measured, like I'd rehearsed them, even though I hadn't. They blinked, tried to laugh. Come on, it's not that serious, one of them said. Another added, it's just a fun thing. We thought you'd want to be involved. But I didn't. Not for free, not in the shadows. I just looked them in the eye and said, I don't work for free anymore. Silence. You could hear the hum of the old overhead projector in the corner. One of them cleared his throat. Another took a very long sip of his coffee, buying time. They approved it the next day. An email arrived with my updated responsibilities. Same salary for now, but a line item with my name on it. A team of 2 junior staff assigned to assist. It wasn't everything, but it was something. A small line of text saying, "We see the work now." The week after that, I was asked to speak on a women's leadership panel. HR framed it as a compliment. You're such a good example of rising through difficulty. She stood in my doorway with a hopeful expression, clutching a clipboard like a shield. We'd love for you to share your story, she said. It would really inspire others. My story, the one they'd watched happen in real time and did nothing about until it became a liability. I said no. The word felt strange in my mouth. Short, solid, like a door closing gently but firmly. She blinked. Her pen paused over her sign-up sheet. She asked why. Me. Because I'm not a story you get to tell while the ending's still being written. Her brows pulled together. I don't follow, she said. Of course she didn't. For her, it was content. A segment between slides, proof that the company supported women. For me, it was my life. I don't think she understood, but she didn't ask again. Kristen tried once more. 2 weeks after she was fired, she emailed me from her personal account. The notification popped up while I was paying my electric bill online. Her name on my screen made my stomach tighten before my brain even registered the words. Said she wanted to talk, clear the air, said we were both pawns in a bigger system. She wrote paragraphs about systemic sexism, about being pitted against each other, about how they used women like us. She used my language, borrowed the concepts I'd once shared with her over lukewarm break room coffee when I still thought she was safe. I read it twice. Not because I was tempted, because I was stunned she still thought we were the same. We weren't. I played fair, she played fake. I covered for people, she recorded them. I stayed late. She stayed until the door locked behind her. She'd built her reputation on charm, not competence. And charm doesn't survive exposure. Charm needs dim lights and selective memory. It crumbles under fluorescent bulbs and audio playback. Tyler, for all his arrogance, just vanished. No lawsuits, no emails, no attempt to make peace. I heard from someone in HR that he tried to claim wrongful termination, file a complaint, use phrases like hostile environment and defamation. But when they reviewed the playback logs, they found more. Not just one call, multiple. Different dates, different times, different rooms. Each one paired to a date when someone else mysteriously lost credit for their work. An analyst pushed out of a project, a coordinator suddenly underperforming, a temp who didn't get their contract renewed. The pattern was obvious. They'd buried people with charm and timing, quick jokes, smoothed over emails, strategic happy hours. But charm and timing can't erase digital footprints, Bluetooth pairing histories, audio cache, timestamps, and the mic doesn't lie. That was the part they never understood. They thought secrets lived in shadows, closed doors, corner offices, late-night calls. They forgot shadows only exist when there's light. If there's a shadow, there's always a source. I didn't respond to Kristen's email. I hovered over the reply button for maybe 3 seconds, imagined what I could say, how easily I could pour every hurt, every betrayal, every late night she'd scripted for me into one long message. Then I closed the window. I archived it. Not delete, not yet, just move, file it away like a finished chapter I didn't owe any more revisions. Then I logged out of everything and walked to the dog park near my apartment. The air outside smelled like wet leaves and car exhaust. It was one of those small, fenced-in spaces squeezed between 2 apartment buildings, grass patchy and worn from paws. There was a kid there, maybe 5, throwing stale bread to a squirrel and talking like it understood him. "Buddy, you gotta share," he told it, breaking the crust carefully. The squirrel twitched its tail, sniffed, and darted forward. His mom was on a bench, flipping through coupons. A plastic grocery bag rested at her feet. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, held together by determination and one overworked hair tie. Every few seconds, she'd look up to check on him, then go back to comparing prices. The world felt simple there. No politics, no strategy. Just tiny hands tossing crumbs and believing it mattered. Dogs bumped into each other, tails wagging. I sat for a long time, let my dog race the perimeter, nose to the ground, free in a way I was still learning to be. Watched the light change on the sidewalk. The sky shifted from harsh blue to softer gray, then to that dark lavender that only exists for a few minutes before night. Felt the air shift with evening. A chill settled in, not painful, just present. People zipped their jackets. Someone called their dog and clipped the leash with a soft click, and I thought about all the things I'd let slide, all the ways I'd made myself small just to fit in their rooms, standing against the wall in conference rooms, letting my ideas be group ideas, laughing off comments that scraped at my ribs from the inside, all the moments I swallowed truth to protect people who would have happily watched me choke on it, the emails I softened, the apologies I offered for things that weren't my fault. That was the real revenge, wasn't it? Not the playback, not the scandal. Those were just sparks. But the silence after, the absence of their voices in meetings, the missing weight of their demands in my inbox, the way their absence didn't leave a hole, just more room for the rest of us to breathe, space for new conversations, for different kinds of people to speak. 3 weeks after the party, my office got rearranged. Not officially. No one made a big announcement. There was no email with a subject line about restructuring or optimization. But quietly, one by one, responsibilities shifted. Calendar invites started landing in my inbox that weren't there before. My name appeared on meeting agendas where I used to be the one taking notes in the back. Documents I used to chase for days just showed up in my shared drives. Suddenly, I was looped into strategy calls, given access to files I used to chase for days, invited to quick syncs with directors who used to forget my name. The tone was always the same. Looping Vanessa in. Adding Vanessa for context. Let's run this by Vanessa before we finalize. They were testing me, not in a cruel way, just carefully, like someone handing back a knife and watching where you set it down. Like they'd seen what happened when I unmuted one mic and were quietly asking themselves, what happens if we give her more? And I didn't mind, because I knew what I was doing now. And more importantly, I knew what I wasn't doing. I wasn't playing nice to survive. I wasn't managing egos just to keep my spot at the table. I wasn't writing PowerPoints for people who couldn't pronounce the clients' names and didn't care enough to learn. I was building something quietly, strategically. Not a moment, not another dramatic reveal. A foundation. The first thing I did was clean out my folders, not just the digital ones. My desk drawers were full of things that didn't belong to me, old favors and invisible labor in paper form. Thank you cards signed with Kristen's name, even though I'd done the work. Project outlines I never got credit for, printed and stapled with her handwriting in the margins where she'd circled my ideas and claimed them as action items. Printed email chains where I'd been removed mid-conversation, the thread suddenly jumping from my name to hers. I pulled everything out and stacked it on my desk. Old lanyards from conferences I organized but didn't attend because someone had to stay back and hold down the fort. Post-it notes with my own handwriting reminding me to follow up on things that should never have been my job. Printed agendas where my section was labeled Other. I sat there for a moment, just looking at the pile. It was my career in miniature. All the ways I'd made myself useful. All the ways they'd made me invisible. I scanned what I needed. Anything that showed my work, my ownership, my contribution. I kept the timelines, the plans, the proof. Filed what mattered, created clean digital folders, backed them up to my own drive, labeled them clearly with my name and role, shredded the rest. The sound of the shredder was oddly soothing. Paper in, teeth grinding, confetti out. It felt like feeding a fire that asked for nothing and gave me clean space in return. Then I updated my LinkedIn. I'd been avoiding it for years, telling myself I'd get around to it, letting my profile sit there, frozen at some earlier version of me, polite, vague, safe, not with the usual excited to share garbage. No emojis, no buzzwords I didn't believe in anymore. Just facts. I listed every system I built, every event I managed, every project I owned. I put dates to them, named the scale, the budget, the outcome. I named names where it counted. Led cross-department rollout in collaboration with regional director. Owned full lifecycle of Q4 client summit, including vendor selection, budget reconciliation, and executive briefing. And for the first time in 5 years, I used my voice in the bio section. I deleted the old line about being a passionate team player. Let the cursor blink at me for a long time. Then I typed, professional, not passive. I build structure, not excuses. I believe in accountability at every level, especially the ones that assume they're above it. I stared at that sentence. It felt almost too honest, too sharp for a platform that loves smooth edges. Then I hit save. It got shared. A lot. Coworkers liked it without commenting. Old classmates commented without liking. A former manager messaged me, proud of you, like he'd ever protected me from anything. Someone from a tech firm in Denver messaged me the same day. Her profile picture was taken in a kitchen, not a boardroom. Curly hair pulled back, tired eyes that still managed to look kind. She said she'd been in a similar spot last year, that it took one email to change everything. "Do you have time to talk?" she wrote. I almost said no. Almost told myself I was too busy, too drained, too something. Instead, I said yes. We talked for 2 hours. Phone pressed between my ear and shoulder while I stirred pasta on the stove. Not about jobs, about truth. She told me about the boss who softened her title when he introduced her to clients, about the colleague who used her research in his presentation and called it a team effort when she hadn't been invited to the meeting, about the day she finally forwarded one email to the right person and watched the whole structure shake. We traded stories like evidence, how it feels to be undermined so gently you almost thank them for it, how you start sentences with, maybe it's just me, but even when you know it's not just you, how betrayal doesn't always come in the form of lies. Sometimes it's the erasure that hits hardest. "I thought I was going crazy," she said. "So did I answered. I didn't cry, but I did feel something loosen in my chest. A knot I hadn't known was tied started to unwind, thread by thread. Like maybe I wasn't alone. Like maybe the problem wasn't that I was too sensitive. Maybe the problem was that too many people had learned to be numb, That's the part no one tells you about public revenge. It makes people see you, not just the people who hurt you, but the ones who were scared to speak, the ones who thought they were the only ones carrying that kind of weight. It gives them a map, proof that there's a way out that doesn't require burning yourself down just to keep them warm. One afternoon, weeks later, I was walking past the second-floor conference room when Melissa stopped me. The hallway smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase markers. Someone had left the door half open, and I could hear the buzz of a speakerphone inside. She stepped out as I walked by, clutching a stack of invoices to her chest like armor. She'd always been quiet, head down. The kind of woman who brings her own tea bags and never asks for help. Her cardigans were always in soft colors, her shoes always flat. She was the person people assumed would say yes because she rarely said no. "Vanessa?" she said. I turned. She looked nervous. Not of me, of what she was about to say. "Melissa," soft. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did." My first instinct was to deflect. Me. "You don't have to." She shook her head before I could finish. "Melissa, no, I do. They did it to me too. Different story, same playbook." Her voice didn't rise. She didn't offer details. She didn't have to. I saw it in the tension around her mouth, in the way her fingers tightened on the papers, knuckles pale. She didn't say more, just held my gaze, steady and deliberate for a beat longer. Then she went back to her desk. But that one look said everything. We weren't broken. We were awake. We weren't overreacting. We were finally reacting, and that changes everything. Awake people don't let things slide the same way. Awake people stop apologizing for taking up space. Kristen sent one final email. Subject line, "Please read." It popped up on my phone on a Tuesday night while I was half watching a show and half scrolling. Her name still made my stomach flip. It was long. Too long. Paragraph after paragraph. She tried to explain her choices, blamed pressure. Family, deadlines, quotas, the unspoken rules of the game. Said she lost herself somewhere between promotions and expectations. That every time she got a new title, she felt less like a person and more like a product. Said Tyler had a hold on her. That he knew how to make her feel small and special at the same time. That when he laughed at her jokes, she felt untouchable, and when he dismissed her, she worked twice as hard to get back in his good graces. She painted herself as trapped. Not innocent, not guilty, just caught. I didn't judge her. I understood more than I wanted to admit. How easy it is to bend just a little until you don't recognize the shape you're in. But I didn't reply either, because her reasons didn't erase her actions. She didn't just hurt me. She built a system to erase anyone who made her feel small. She forwarded messages out of context. She fed him information. She laughed when he made jokes at other women's expense. She'd built a little kingdom out of proximity to power, and I wasn't going to carry her guilt for her. I closed the email, let it sit in my inbox for one full minute. Then I dragged it to a folder labeled Archive and left it there. Instead, I started building a proposal, a formal one, not an idea whispered in a hallway, not a bullet point tacked onto the end of someone else's plan, for a mentorship initiative, internal, women-led, cross-departmental, something that didn't depend on charm or favoritism, something that couldn't be erased with one bad manager. I opened a blank document and typed at the top, Mike, mentorship, integrity, clarity. I named it, Mike, mentorship, integrity, clarity, a small joke, a nod to one December night and a single unmuted button. But the HR lead smiled when she saw it. We sat in a glass-walled conference room, the city spread out below us in gray and red taillights. HR, very on brand. Her eyes flicked up from the page, amusement softening the usual professional distance. Me. Yeah, I guess I found my brand. Not revenge, not compliance, accountability. She approved it the next quarter. Budgeted and backed. She found money in a line item I'd never heard of. She made room in the training calendar. She put her name beside mine on the sponsorship list. By spring, we had 12 mentees, all women, all first-time hires. They walked into the first session with notebooks and guarded eyes, some in blazers a little too stiff, some in dresses that tried too hard to say, "I belong here." I taught them things no one teaches you, not how to impress, how to survive without disappearing, how to document your work. Screenshots are your friend, I told them. Keep your own copies, save agendas with your name on them. Track what you do, not just what they say you do. How to spot reputation theft. If someone keeps rephrasing your ideas and presenting them as their own, that's not collaboration, I said. That's extraction. How to say no without apology. We practiced sentences out loud. I don't have capacity for that right now. That falls outside my role. Who owns this work? I can help if we adjust priorities, but something else will need to move. They stumbled at first, laughed at how strange it felt to hear their own voices draw boundaries, and how to hold the mic when it matters, not to expose, to protect themselves, to protect the people coming after them, to protect the truth when everyone else is trying to talk over it. Spring turned to summer, and the office felt different. It did not happen overnight. There was no dramatic moment where everyone stood in a circle and promised to be better. It was more like the slow way sunlight starts to last longer after winter. One day you look up and realize it is still bright outside at 7 o'clock, and something in your brain finally believes in warmth again. Lighter, quieter, more honest. Conversations in the hallway lost that hushed quality. No more quick silences when someone walked past. No more tight little circles of people whispering around the coffee machine, laughing in a way that didn't match their eyes. The kind of quiet that didn't hum with tension or secrets. Just work. People doing their jobs, saying what they meant, and knowing someone might actually be listening. You would think that would be standard. You would think honesty would be the baseline instead of a pleasant surprise. But there we were. An office full of adults acting like we had just discovered we could speak plainly and not get burned alive for it. I wasn't promoted, not officially. No title change, no big corner office. No email from leadership with my photo in it and buzzwords about resilience and teamwork. My name on the org chart stayed exactly where it had been. But power? Real power? That came in other ways. It came in little moments. In who people looked at when they were confused, in who got copied on the emails that mattered, in who they trusted when numbers did not add up and nobody wanted to be blamed for bringing it up. People started checking with me before meetings. "Hey, Vanessa, does this look right to you? Do you think this is worth raising with the director? Am I missing something here?" They would lean against my cubicle wall or hover by my chair, laptop in hand. Their voices were casual, but their eyes were focused. They wanted truth, not flattery. They wanted clarity, not comfort. Asking what I thought. Not just about fonts or timelines or logistics, about strategy, about whether a client's request was realistic, about whether an idea felt solid or just loud. Deferring, even when they didn't say it out loud. There would be a moment in meetings where a question hung in the air. People would glance around at the table, then their eyes would land on me. Sometimes the director would say, "Vanessa, what's your take?" Other times he would just stay quiet and wait until I spoke first. Not because I'd scared them. I had not yelled. I had not threatened. I had not turned into the office Avenger people swap stories about at happy hour. Because I'd made it clear I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of losing my job for telling the truth. Not of being labeled difficult for asking for credit. Not of being seen as the problem just because I refused to carry everyone else's. And that changes the room. People can feel when you are no longer trying to shrink yourself to make them comfortable. It shifts the air. They sit up straighter. They think twice before tossing work your way just because you have always said yes. One afternoon, I got a call from a vendor we used for corporate events. I was in my office, halfway through rewriting an agenda so it reflected the actual speakers instead of the fantasy list someone had slapped together. My phone lit up with an unfamiliar number under the vendor's company name. The woman on the other end, Clara, said she'd been working with Kristen before her termination. Her voice was professional, steady. But there was a tightness there, like she had been rehearsing this call for a while. "Clara, there's some outstanding invoices." Kristen approved them, but they were strange. Private dinners, personal car services. One invoice was for a rental house during a wellness retreat, but no one else was there. I swiveled in my chair and stared at the window while she spoke. The city shimmered in the heat, cars crawling along the interstate like slow beads of light. "What do you mean strange?" I asked. She hesitated for a second. "Clara, they were billed to corporate accounts, but the descriptions don't match any events we have in our system, and the contact names she listed as attendees. They all denied being there. Two of them forwarded me your email as the event coordinator. Only you had never seen those bookings, right?" I hadn't. My stomach did that familiar drop. The one that says this is bigger than you wanted it to be. I asked her to send everything over. And she did. Invoices, timestamps, even text confirmations, screenshots of messages from Kristen confirming car pickups, rental agreements for a house tagged as a wellness location, booked for weekends when no company event existed, notes in the margins mentioning team reset and off-site planning that never appeared on any calendar, all pointing to a misuse of company funds, and not just misuse, manipulation, using budgets with names like wellness and development to hide something personal, something secret, something they had been so sure would never see daylight. At first, I didn't want to get involved. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. Let the ceiling, tiles come into focus. Part of me was so tired of being the one who found things, the one who saw the rot spreading under the paint, the one who had to decide whether to stay quiet or pull the thread and watch what unraveled. But then I remembered something Kristen said on that call. "If HR ever hears this, we're done." I guess she wasn't just talking about the affair. She knew what she was doing. She knew where the line was and how far past it she had stepped. This wasn't a mistake. It was a structure, one she had built with intention, and she had left my name in the blueprint. Two of the invoices had my name written in the approval initials. My name, in a handwriting that was not mine. My name, under a budget note I had never seen. I packaged everything and handed it over to compliance. I did not turn it into a show. No dramatic confrontation, no speeches. Just a folder, a brief description, and the facts. "Here is what the vendor sent," I said. "My name is on two of these. I did not authorize them. I thought you should know." They asked if I could stay and answer questions. I told them I had a meeting in 10 minutes. I did not. But I had a boundary. They could do their jobs now. I had done mine, didn't even stay for the meeting. I walked out, heart beating steady, not fast. It felt different from the night of the holiday party. Less like I was breaking something and more like I was finally refusing to hold it together for them. I'd done my part. Let the mic speak again. Except this time, the mic was paper and signatures and digital trails. No music, no speakers, just lines on a page that told a story whether anyone liked it or not. By July, it was confirmed. The emails came one by one. From compliance, from HR, from finance. Kristen had been funneling funds from our wellness budget into private retreats with Tyler, summer rentals near lakes, spa days masked as leadership sessions, car services to and from places that never appeared on our event schedules. And she'd used my name, twice, to sign off on it. Forgery, quiet, small, but enough. It was not some grand embezzlement scheme. It was not the kind of thing you see on the news. But inside our world, it was a crack in the wall big enough to matter. She wasn't just fired anymore. She was barred from industry events. Her badge for a regional conference was revoked. Her name was removed from attendee lists. Invitations she had previously taken for granted disappeared without explanation. Blacklisted from 3 vendor lists. Vendors talk to each other. They compare notes. They protect themselves. And under formal investigation. Not by me, not by rumor. By people whose job is to follow numbers until they reach the truth. I didn't gloat. I did not text anyone. I did not make a joke. I did not open her social media to see how she was spinning it, because by then, I didn't need to. The satisfaction did not come from watching her fall. It came from knowing I had finally stopped being the padding around her landing. One of the interns, Jamie, asked me that day if I felt like justice had been served. She caught me in the break room, standing in front of the fridge holding a container I could not remember putting there. Jamie. Hey, can I ask you something? I nodded. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes wide and serious. Jamie. About everything? Do you feel like justice was done? Like, is this what justice feels like? I thought about how tired I still was some days, about the notebook still sitting in my bag, about Melissa's quiet thank you and the Denver woman's late night call. Me. I don't know if it's justice, but it's enough. She frowned a little, thinking. Jamie. Enough for what? Me. Enough for me to stop carrying what isn't mine. Enough to know that the story doesn't end with them getting away with it. That's all I needed. She let out a breath she had probably been holding. Jamie. Okay, that helps. And it was, not because she was gone, but because the version of me that tolerated it was gone too. The me who stayed late without question. The me who laughed off comments. The me who clapped for stolen work. She was done. They used to say I was too quiet, too agreeable, not assertive enough to lead. I remember those exact words on a performance review once, written in neat bullet points between highly dependable and great team fit, as if leadership was loudness, as if saying yes was the only music they wanted to hear. Now, they called me the one who doesn't miss a thing. I heard it in the hallways. Run it by Vanessa, she'll catch anything off. Ask Vanessa, she'll tell you if something smells wrong. Loop Vanessa in, she sees the patterns. It wasn't framed as a threat, it was respect. A woman in another department pulled me aside once and said, I heard what happened. You're kind of a legend now. We were in the lobby waiting for the elevators. The doors kept opening and closing, people stepping in and out, and there we were, in that little island of stillness between floors and destinations. I smiled. A small one, but I also knew something she didn't. This wasn't a story about legend. It was a story about silence, and what happens when you stop protecting the people who count on it, the ones who rely on you to smooth things over, to ignore your instincts, to swallow what you heard. I wasn't the villain. Even though some people probably whispered that I ruined careers, that I should have kept it internal, that I went too far. I wasn't the victim. Even though I had been overlooked, underpaid, and strategically erased, I was the volume knob they forgot existed, the one tucked off to the side of the board, the one they never looked at because they assumed it would stay. Where they left it. They trusted the mute button. They trusted my silence, my compliance, my need to be liked. So Christmas turned the volume up, not just on them, on me, on every woman who walked into that building after I did, on every person who had been told to be grateful for scraps while someone else feasted. The party was just the moment they all heard it at the same time. The rest of it, the cleaning, the rebuilding, the mentoring, the proposals, the conversations in hallways, was what turned that moment into a life, a blueprint, not for revenge, for power. The kind of power that does not come from a title or a bigger office or a nameplate on a door. The kind of power that comes from knowing where the volume knob is and never again pretending you don't. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.